it's powerful when you realize you don't need a bunch of yeses.
That too, because these are not small contracts Zach is getting, y'all. You don't need a bunch of yeses. Like when you're doing 5-figure, 6-figure contracts, multi-year contracts too. Hey friends, hey, it's Nikayla here, and welcome back to another episode of Side Hustle Pro. Today, I'm interviewing Zach Nunn, a certified side hustler turned full-time entrepreneur who is also one of my Podcast Moguls coaching clients. He's an OG, okay? He's been here since 2019. I think we started working together. And Zach is the CEO and founder of Living Corporate, which is an experience management company that uses data analytics, e-learning, and brand storytelling to support employee engagement and market trust for mid-size and multinational companies. Zach pivoted from an esteemed career in HR and consulting to entrepreneurship, all because of his podcast, Living Corporate. And despite all of these work accomplishments, his biggest passions are his wife, Candace, their daughters, and their twins on the way. And in this episode, Zach shares how he's been able to land multi-year partnerships with major brands as an independent podcaster without massive downloads. By the way, if you're ready to earn revenue from your podcast, head over to sidehustlepro.co/Podcast Moguls to learn all about my Podcast Moguls coaching program. The link is in the show notes and description. Now let's get into this convo with Zach. All right. Zach Nunn is in the building, you guys. And this is an OG original Podcast Moguls coaching client. And Zach, I am just so happy to have you here because I want people to understand how you can really build a life and a business, starting with a podcast and how you've done it and how strategic you've been. But first, let's go back for a little bit. What was your career journey before starting the podcast?
Okay, but I have to start, to your point, give you flowers. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I recognize I'm only the second man to be on your pod, and it's an honor and it's a privilege. So Thank you. Now, to answer your question, straight up, I just started my career just trying to get a job, because I just wanted a job, right? So I started off as a music major in college. Then I met this woman who I was like, I gotta marry her, and I can't buy a house quickly as a assistant band director. So I changed my major to business, and I just got a job. Okay. So, because I enjoy people energize me. I'm passionate about people and connection. I decided to go the HR route. And so I started my career as a human resources manager at Target, and I continued on human resources. I went from and I zigzagged everywhere. I was zig and zagging. Okay,
that makes us all feel better, right? The zigzag.
I was zigging and zagging. So I went to Target. I was there for like 8 months. I was like, I don't understand how people can just stay in a single store all day and manage to do the same things over and over. I was there for 8 months. I went to the energy sector. Was there for a while, a couple years. Then I went into the pharmaceutical industry. Then I went into consulting. Then I went into tech, and then I did my own thing. But like throughout all of these different zigs and zags and these, I don't know. I felt like every 18 months I had a new job. Over 13 years of working, it was all in the people space. It was all in the organizational transformation, leadership. It was all in this like people-oriented space. I still and I can believe then, and I still believe now that people and experience are always going to be central to anything that you're doing. It doesn't matter what it is. People have a role in it. We are a human society. And so human beings are always going to be the driving factor. So that was really my career up until I made the full-time leap to Living Corporate.
Why did you start the Living Corporate podcast?
Yeah. So, I'm a black man in a white world, like the song goes, and I'm a large black man in a white world. You know what I'm saying? And there's privileges that come. So first of all, privilege is multivariable, and it's definitely not binary at all. So there's definitely privileges of being tall. There's privileges in having a deep voice. There's privileges in being broad-shouldered. There's also disadvantages in that too, right? I'm 6'2", 280, black man, trying to navigate in the human resources space, yes. Which is overwhelmingly white women. I continue forward in my career, and I just realized I'm one of the onlys in most spaces. And, to have experiences that go from man, you're so well spoken. Were you adopted? Or your parents black?
Oh, no, they didn't.
Yeah, somebody said that to me, dog. I said, yes, my parents are black. Why would you say that to me? Or the other way of, wow, I'm just so impressed. I'm so surprised at how you present. Then to other just outright macro aggressions and just points of disrespect. And then also, they're just not seeing a lot of people that look like me. So my desire was to create space for authentic, real conversations. I think so often, and this is not about to be a wag my finger at black folks pod. I'm not about to do that. At the same time, I will say that we often in corporate America find ourselves looking to self-preserve. So very rarely are you going to have people
for good reason, right?
For good and proven reason. Self-preservation won't save you. That's probably a podcast for another time. But the point is that we get into the self-preservation mode. And so we don't want to have authentic conversations. We don't want to pull other people aside. We don't necessarily want to draw attention to ourselves. We think that by isolating and just kind of keeping our head down and working, we can protect ourselves. And so it was hard for me, even in the scant few times I would find people that look like me who gave me real talk, right? And so for me, I was looking for a space that was authentic to me, that was honest, that was candid and frank about navigating the world of work as one of the onlys. And so that's where Living Corporate started. And we started by interviewing executives, entrepreneurs, activists, elected officials, authors, influencers, educators, typically who were black and brown. And the vibe, Nikayla, was like me and you going out for drinks. So we're going to talk about these people out here.
Talking the real, right.
Talking that real. Like, it's outside of HR gaze, outside of needing to be careful not to offend anybody. Yeah, we're just having an authentic conversation.
Yeah. And was it always about just navigating the space of there only being a few of us in these places that we're trying to ascend to and are now attaining, but figuring out how to make it work for us?
Early on, yes, it was really about career navigation. And then as time went on, because, I started this podcast in 2018. And so I was very much so still working. In 2018, my career looked differently than it did in 2021. So as time went on and my career became more nuanced and I learned more things, I believe the conversations also became more nuanced. So it stopped being so focused just on how to navigate and play the game, quote unquote, and more about, let's talk about your job in the context of it and what does it look like for you to lift as you climb. We started having more nuanced discussions about even the psychology of self-preservation and micro and macroaggression and the history of this stuff, right? We had Ben Jealous on the pod a couple years ago to talk about the role of the NAACP and what does revolution actually look like? And is revolution possible within the Black working class? And how does capitalism in its current stage play a role in that? Do we need to reimagine some of these systems? So things became much more rich as time went on, but ultimately the conversations were very much so still candid. So the point is that I'm really proud of the types of discussions that we've been able to have. And I'm really thankful for that. I'm excited about the fact that we started Living Corporate before this stuff was in vogue and we're still continuing while it's under attack.
But moving on, because I want to cover a lot in this convo.
Let's keep going.
What was the process of keeping this, particularly given the topic, right? Keeping this as your side hustle while you were working?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Corporate America is so, for me, it was so soul sucking that I was desperate to make sure that I had something I was passionate about. Okay. And so as I continue forward and I had my mentors and stuff, I just really became obsessed with purpose. Hey, you need to identify your purpose and operate in your purpose. And so Living Corporate, despite the fact that I was a consultant, flying around, traveling, working 50, 60 hours, hey, I'm going to put in whatever extra hours I need to record, pod, schedule, and promote these podcasts. Because I have to. It became something that was just critical to my own existence. It's funny in hindsight, and maybe because I didn't have any kids at the time, now I got two with two more on the way. It's like I had all this time. And I think I would say for anybody who has any type of side hustle, be it a podcast or anything, it's not going to do as well as it can. And it might not survive if it is not intrinsically tied to some part of your purpose. For me, because it was critical for my own just continuance as a person
Right.
I had to make it work, and I did.
I love that you said that because, recently I did an episode and I shared some side hustle ideas and ones that I've even considered. And I think what is always hard for me to pursue something that could be a good idea is, am I going to want to do this when it's hard? Because does it mean anything to me, right? Is it something I actually care about? And you can learn to care about something, but you have to find that connection. Even if it's like, you know what? I see the potential for this to be a legacy building, wealth building tool for my family. That could be the connection. Like,
Right.
And now I'm getting passionate about it because I see the vision, but there has to be something there that drives you.
Yeah.
So you had that drive. I relate to that. I had that feeling too with Side Hustle Pro. Like, I'm going to take this seriously because I know where it can go. So, what were some of the moves you made when you realized you wanted it to be more than a podcast, but a business too, specifically a consulting business in and of itself?
Yeah. So what I realized was, going back to corporate, is I was like, yo, I'm just not long for this world. I'm just not long for this space. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't have no back down, which is like a good thing and a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I'm pretty good at just seeing things before they happen, right? And so I just knew. I was like, okay, eventually, like, I'm going to lose it and I'm going to quit in some fury. So let me just like figure out how I can make my own path before a path is made for me. And so as I thought about my own career, I said, okay, Living Corporate is a podcast and it exists as a podcast right now. And so for me, like, the thing that sparked it all was all these agencies, like so many agencies, and all these PR agencies were pitching their people to me.
Who were they pitching? Oh, they were pitching their execs to you.
Correct. PR agencies are reaching out. Marketing agencies are reaching out. Obviously, they're reaching out to me for a reason because I don't see this person on all the podcasts. So I saw what I was doing in corporate America. I like change management and consulting and leadership development. I also love data transformation work. And I also really like technology and training. So how can I just take the things that I'm doing for these corporate spaces and giving my first fruits to, and what can I do to like fold that into Living Corporate and just have, so that way when I pivot, I'm pivoting, but like vocationally, like I'm really still doing the same kind of stuff. I'm just doing it for myself. And I created a wraparound of, here's how podcasting and these other pieces can kind of fit into themselves.
I love the bundle approach that you created. Like Zach inspires me, y'all. Like, I have taken what he has done and the tips he has shared with me, and I'm now getting ready to incorporate his advice, right, into my structure. Because similarly, I was like, all right, people pitch me, cool. It's either you're on the show or you're not on the show. But wait a second. Being on the show, and I'm talking about execs, corporations, brand partners here, being on the show does a lot for you. What are you getting from this? And then what payments and paid opportunities should I develop, so it can be some reciprocity?
100%. I mean, it's value. So like if they reach out to you and talk about, oh, we're looking for earned media in this place. And it's like, yeah, but I'm giving you value though.
Yeah.
Right. Like, obviously there's a reason why you reached out to me. So even if they're not going to pay an invoice, there needs to be some type of reciprocal agreement of like something. Yes. And so that helped me kind of get those wheels turning for sure.
Yeah. And so what were some of the things that you started to include in your bundle?
Yeah. So first thing was I had to realize that I had to slow myself down because I would be like, oh, I'm going to record. So I'd be like, all right, first off, I'm going to produce the show. Okay. I'm going to write out these questions. I'm going to make sure that we're all set up for recording. Then we're going to record it. Then I'm going to edit it. Then I'm going to create clips. And then we're going to publish it everywhere on all the players. And then we're going to put it on our website. We'll put it on our newsletter. And then we're going to promote it on social media. So like all of that is still just the media, right?
And I like how you call that out because all of those steps are work that podcasters, content creators, you can take for granted. You're like, you skip over all of that sometimes and you're like, and then I'm gonna, but no. No. We're going to take it step by step of what I'm doing.
And we're going to transcribe the show. Okay.
Yes.
And we're going to do it in like a handful of days. So there's a value in the speed of it, as well as just the fact that we're doing all that labor. And I heard your question about bundle, but I wanted to slow down because that's what corporations do. And when you slow down, you explain it to them that way. They also appreciate it because they realize, oh, wait, that means I don't have to hire or use our employees for all these different things. You're going to just create all the copy for us. Yes, I am. Right.
And I'm glad you slowed me down because I fall into the trap. I'm speaking for myself when I say it's so easy when a brand comes to you to start like racking your brain to like do all these miscellaneous things and like over delivering when you are and take it for granted the basics that you are doing that are labor intensive.
And the thing about it is brands, not people, but brands are big, slow things. So they don't really have necessarily crazy expectations for you to do 50, 11 things, right? I've seen situations where brands will pay $300,000, $400,000 for you to just make them a podcast, like not like just like make them a whole pod like that will sit up on a player, and then do like 3 episodes. They'll pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for that. And when you slow things down, explain to them, okay, well, here's the value. And I learned this from you in the Podcast Moguls program, but where you explain like, hey, here's what I'm doing, and here's the value of that thing, and then you list it all out, and you say, now look, the market value of this is X, but I'm willing to give you I'm willing to only charge you 13% of that, right? That helps a lot. But anyway, to your point about the bundle. So it's about recording and marketing and promoting the content, putting up in different places, the podcast interview. This is for our brand storytelling. Then it's also about providing dynamic ads that we work with them on to then record and then insert throughout our network over agreed amounts of time. And then it's about like ongoing updates and spotlights with like other parts of their leadership for a set amount of time. So like all of that is really a campaign. For the brand, what they then have from you is a whole little media machine that is just working and pumping out content for them that they can then put their finger on the scale to help amplify if they want, or let it run and then take it and put it wherever they want to put it.
So you mentioned 2 things. Your network. So tell us about the network, but then also tell us about the intellectual property piece. Because if they can put it everywhere, is it theirs or is it yours? So yeah, those 2 things, the network and the IP.
So the network piece is important. You're right. So Living Corporate, we started as a singular podcast. Time went on. I had these aspirations. My first thing before Living Corporate became like an experiences management company, I wanted to be a media company, like just a pure. And I was like, I really want to be like Warner Brothers, but for Black and brown people at work, right? I wanted to like just have a ton of different content. So we have different podcasts on Black women identity and liberation, podcasts on the intersection of mental health and Black identity at work, resume building and LinkedIn navigation, podcasts for early college students. And so it's dope because, and they all still exist. They're all limited series. But if you go on Apple and you click Living Corporate Network, you're going to see like 8 different shows. And and it's not chump either. We got like at least 20, 30 pods per show. And of course, Living Corporate got like a 900. So, but the point is like when you show that and you present that to brands and you say, hey, look, we have a network of content and we're willing to amplify your brand across this network. And the reason why that's relevant for you is because these networks reach different demos, all demos that you care about. Right. And so that framing is powerful for them. And then part B was what?
The IP, they can take this content and put it places. So who owns it?
Yeah, so that depends on the agreement that we decide, right? So the brands that we work with, they get excited about the prospect that whatever we create, they have equal or full ownership of. That they like that because because typically the conversations we're having, I mean, I'll give like Pfizer as an example. We did our brand activation with Pfizer over several years, mind you, during the panorama. The content was evergreen. We were spotlighting Black and brown leaders, talking about their journey, talking about why Pfizer is a critical place to work, their investment in Black and brown communities. So yes, it was hyper pertinent during the pandemic, but they also still have that content on the recruiting page. They can leverage that content historically for Black History Month. They can use that content in some of their customer experience activations, the clips and things of that nature, the transcripts. So they get excited about that, because what I realize that a lot of brands don't necessarily do well, because every company does not have a Nikayla who can engage their talent. A lot of companies suck at engaging their own leadership and having really frank, honest conversations. They're not good at that. It's weird.
They're focused on other things. I mean, if you have a SaaS company, right, you're trying to sell your software and you don't realize the connection between amplifying and telling those stories and selling the software.
Absolutely. And so what I realize is that brands will pay a premium to have someone come in and elicit and suss out really authentic conversation. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we work with our brands and they say things like, wow, I've been working with John for like, he's been here for 15 years. I didn't even know he went through that. I didn't know that's how he felt, or I didn't know that was his experience. I mean, that was incredible. What a great conversation. And I think it's tough. I think it's, especially like in the media space, I think it's easy to get caught up on the numbers. Okay, hey, it didn't do 20 million views or whatever. The quality of the content actually does matter, because if you create something for a client that is really rich, they can then take that and they'll spend $20,000 on Google ads and it'll get 20 million views. Okay. So don't, I like to, when I tell folks just about, and this again, media, but just your hustle period is like, yo, do not short on the quality. I think a lot of people like to fast forward and get eyes on something or like go viral. And it's like the algorithm has changed so much now. It's like, as corny or whatever as it may sound, really focus on like authenticity and candor and quality of your whatever it is you're doing. And the right people will find it. And it doesn't matter if your little YouTube views only says a couple thousand. If the right one in that couple thousand saw it, you are good.
Now, how do you sell that? Like, let's really break this down, right? Because everyone's caught up on numbers, like you said. And you think as the creator that you need to say, oh, I have XYZ thousands and this is why you should work with me. How do you make that switch in your head and communicate that to brands, like about the quality, about what they're really getting as the value?
Maybe it's just because of how I came up. I think I'm at peace with owning what I am and owning what I ain't. You know what I'm saying? So like when I met Candace, my wife, like, hey, yo, I'm not on the football team. I'm not on the basketball team. I'm a tuba player, yo. We should go together. Right? It's about owning like what it is. Like, so to your question about how we sell this, right? Just very directly is.
Right. How do we not make it about numbers?
Yeah. So the conversation we have is I say, listen, living corporate is not the Daily. Living corporate is not Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro does like 9 million downloads a day, right? And
That's
so I was like, hey, we're not doing. I said, living corporate will. I said, not only do we not do that, we will never do that. I said, yeah, look, we do about like anywhere from 7,000 to 12,000 downloads a month. I said, but here's the thing: the reason why people engage us is because we're able to have frank, authentic conversations that your HR teams will not let you have, and brands reach out to us despite the fact that we only do these numbers because of the authenticity of the discussions. I was like, so this is not me pitching that if you work with Living Corporate, you're going to have millions of Black and brown people knocking on your job application portal. You will not. I said, however, this can be the filter by which you can apply to your marketing efforts to help you reach those people. Because the team I was talking to at the time, their annual budget was like $10 million. Like just that one team.
Did you know that at the time, like, or after some time of working together?
It took me like one bad proposal and then they told me later, and I was like, hey, cool. I'm gonna hit y'all over the head every time after this. And so, what they told me, and they said, oh, thank you. This makes sense. And guess what? We walked into it eyes wide open. And what they would do is we would take that podcast and then we would go out. And and by the way, for those who don't know, there's also like paid promotion through podcasting too, that everybody uses.
Yeah.
Like now we don't want to talk about it, but it's true. There's bots and streams and automatic ads and promotions. Just like in the music industry, those tools exist too. They don't like individuals knowing about it, but all the major networks do it. And they just drop 20, 30,000, which is why it'll be like, oh, this was number 5 on Spotify, or this was number 2 on Apple, or whatever the case is, because somebody went and put bread on that. And so for us, for that particular client with Pfizer, I said, hey, I didn't see Pfizer retweeted on their socials, on y'all socials. I said, oh yeah, but we have our own shadow accounts that we use to like promote blah, 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 blah. It's just like that. And so, but when I went into that conversation with my eyes wide open to just be very transparent and own it, yo, Nikayla, it was so liberating. And it then helped me triple focus on what I can control, which is showing up on time, creating good content, making sure that the copy looks right, making sure that the website is clean, making sure that I'm being as responsive and I'm serving my client well. And then when we look up and we look at the numbers and we say, okay, hey, great. This conversation with Dr. Dumars did 30,000 downloads. It got 2,000 clicks. It got da-da-da-da. This is what it generated over 3 days. What generated over 7 days. What generated over 30 days. It's a much more liberating discussion. And then it also empowers you to come back to the table and continue to work with them. And no one feels short-sighted. No one feels slighted or taken advantage of because you didn't promise them something that you did not give them.
I want to clarify something because I'm sure there's some podcasters you're listening, you don't have massive downloads, but there's still levels to this, right? Like you can't approach Pfizer with 200 downloads a month or 1,000 downloads a month, right? So you still need to get to a place where you're showing consistency, seriousness, and interest from a substantial amount of people. So what steps did you take to even get there? Where you could attract the interest of Pfizer?
What I realized is by the time Pfizer came on, that was like in 2020, 2021. So I already had hundreds of downloads under my belt. And I was really passionate about getting big names. Not because I'm thirsty, but because I knew that I'm obsessed with the future as part of like this, my anxiety disorder. I'm always thinking about, okay, like what's going to happen 5 years from now? So early I said, okay, if I get these executives, irrespective of what the numbers look like, I'll be able to look at this portfolio of speakers that I've been able to capture. So if I show, and so by the time I was able to have a conversation with a Pfizer and I showed them like a picture, and this is on my proposal, my About Us page, it was like a collage of logos. And I said, all these logos represent executives that I've interviewed on Living Corporate.
Very smart.
Right. Yep. And then like, I think at that point in time, we had Nicole Hannah-Jones, we had DeRay McKesson, we had Lovey, we had all these people. So I was able to show them, I said, look, here are people that we've been able to work with to help them promote their book, whatever. And then here are brands. And so you're right. I didn't just come at them with the numbers. I came at them with a story and a history of people. Right. So I'm a proven entity in this space, irrespective if you've heard of me or not. Guess what? All these brands trusted their leaders to talk to me on the record, and all these people decided to come and talk to me also.
Very strategic of you. And did you do anything in particular when you were starting out to land those people when they might not have heard of your podcast before?
Oh my gosh. I was on LinkedIn harassing people. Like I'm just, hey, and I would like, and I'd write out like these like different messages to different people. And then I was I was DMing, like DeRay as an example. I got him on, and what was interesting is that, and I still don't know the answer, right? But like I know these PR agencies obviously have to have directories. And so what happened was after like maybe the first 30 or 40 pods, then like I started getting on these directories, then they really started ramping up, right? Because around the time of the murder of George Floyd, and then right before the murder of George Floyd, a lot of these like books started coming to fruition. So everyone was trying to promote their book. And so that helped a lot. Penguin and Viking, like getting a relationship with them.
They love a pitch at the publishers. And I think they also look at I think they Google names before, since they don't know podcasts, they look up the shows that certain names have been on when they're planning out a marketing plan for someone else. So I think that's how they start to see. So it's good when you are able to land names for that reason, because you start to get noticed in that way. And then how did you start approaching brands? Did you work from an internal connect or just going cold?
So you know what? So Pfizer, I'm gonna keep on talking about Pfizer. So Pfizer happened, it was weird because I got platformed on CBS This Morning.
Okay.
And then CBS This Morning Googled Living Corporate and saw that one of their employees was a podcaster on the network. Reached out to them. So they reached out to their own employee and was like, hey, do you work here also? And they were like, I mean, yeah.
Wait. So CBS, what do you mean? So they platformed you like
yeah, so CBS This Morning.
What that means.
So before CBS went through all the stuff they went through, CBS This Morning was doing a story about like Black employment and working while Black. And they reached out. They were like, hey, the producer was like, I'm looking for people, da da da. I was like, I'll do it. And so during my little spotlight, I featured Living Corporate and they put my logo up on CBS This Morning.
Love it.
Then Pfizer saw it, to your point, Googled Zach Nunn, Living Corporate, and then their employee popped up. They reached out to their employee and was like, hey, can you connect me? You're not in trouble. Connect us with Zach. So that happened. That was the freakiest one. Yeah. And then the other ones were always me pushing. And to your point, I'm definitely going to use an internal plug because by the time I decided to start like really trying to generate revenue through the podcast, I had already spoken with so many leaders. So like if I want to go do business with Accenture, well, I interviewed Marty Rogers at Accenture, who's a president of North America. So I should be able to have somebody over there should be able to connect me with somebody else. I want to do business with Capgemini. Well, I've interviewed Janet Pope, who's the VP of corporate responsibility. So
another very strategic move. Like the interviews are the networking chats, y'all.
Listen,
like you don't need to pick nobody's brain no more. I will interview you.
I interview you and I'll platform you and I'll amplify you. And so guess what? The worst thing you get from me is you get your brand amplified. But here's the thing, to your point, yes, the podcast ended up being the tip of the spear for lead generation. And I tell people this all the time. Like, if you sit down with me for an hour and do a pod with me, you're going to want to do some type of business with me. Now, you're going to be interested in doing something. Now, will you ultimately say yes? Maybe you won't. But will you say yes to a proposal? Yes, you will. And like, what would happen was, I was like, I'm just going to like give these percentages. Let's say like, if I interview the head of human resources at Merck Pharmaceutical, afterwards, I'll say something like, hey, I really appreciate this conversation. You know, you said some of the things you said you're working on, they actually are in alignment with some of the priorities for Living Corporate. I'd love to just send you like some information about Living Corporate and see if we can work together. Would you be open to that? That's a hard thing to say no to, especially after you just sat down, kikied, laughed with me, and agreed with so many of my strategic points for 45 minutes. Yes. Now, the closing rate on those proposals is probably 35%.
That's still high.
That's not bad.
That's not
And then
bad.
in a down market, maybe it goes down to 25%. But guess what? I'm doing like, at that point, I was doing like 5 or 6 podcast recordings a week. Like I was recording all the time. Yeah. So, you know, it generates, but you have to be pretty relentless. Yeah. And you also have to kind of get over yourself, right?
Yes.
I don't mind being turned down because, you know, they like buses, you know, miss one, next 15, another one coming. Shout out Gucci Man. You know what I'm saying? So like.
And you're good at that. Yeah. Because I think that stops a lot of us for sure. Like, oh, the sting of being told no, you got to get over it faster and you can't let it phase you as much as you do.
It's powerful when you realize you don't need a bunch of yeses.
That too, because these are not small contracts Zach is getting, y'all. You don't need a bunch of yeses. Like when you're doing 5-figure, 6-figure contracts, multi-year contracts too.
And I think the other part is for people listening to this is you got to get the no's are going to come. Be thankful for the no's so you can get the no's out the way. Because there's a yes down there. Yes. You just get them. Okay, no, I'm not interested. Okay, no problem. Yeah. Put them in your little mailer and circle back with them every 6 months.
Right.
But it's okay. Eventually,
and you get the practice. Yep.
You get to practice.
Hey friends, hey, before we get back into today's episode, I want to make sure you know all about Podcast Moguls. Podcast Moguls is my coaching program and mastermind where I help emerging podcasters grow their personal brand and full-time income from their podcasts. So inside of Podcast Moguls, you have the course itself, but don't worry if you're not someone who wants to just go through a course and never hear from me again. You get to hear from me each and every month when we have our special mastermind sessions. This is where we deep dive on a topic that is relevant to making money as a podcaster right now. So if that's interesting to you, then head over to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls to join the current cohort of Podcast Moguls. All right. Again, that's sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. So speaking of practice, when you were developing proposals and all of this, like, was that based on your experience in consulting, or were you just kind of figuring out as you go? You're like, okay, this proposal didn't work. Maybe I'll tweak this a little next time and, like go from there. How did you approach that part?
Consulting was definitely a cheat code because I worked on, I do proposals as a consultant. You're working on, you're responding to RFPs every day, right?
Yeah.
So you understand like the basic structure of a proposal. Here's the problem statement. Here's what we can do. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what a timeline will look like. And then here are potential costs, your optionality in terms of what you like to pay. Now, do you tweak those things? Yes, but ultimately that's kind of what it is. And so, yes, consulting was a cheat code for sure.
So let's talk about making money from your pod and from when you started, how long it took you to start making money, and then how long it took you to leave to do it full time.
So Living Corporate was not focused on making money for like the first 2 years. Like I was just focused on getting content out and really, really like the podcast being just a means of my own personal survival. Was not concerned at all about making any money. Around the time that Pfizer reached out was when opportunities really came. So I would say like 2.5 years of me just creating content, publishing every single week, multiple times a week, 4 years. When Pfizer came about, what I realized was that like there were other ways to make money too. So we done like different types of dynamic ad agreements, like with brands like Red Circle, where we record and then we put the stuff that there's Spotify dynamically inserted ads and things of that nature. Those things though, those ads, and I know we've talked about this before, you have to do stupid numbers.
Yes.
Okay. You gotta go dummy to make money off ads. Like straight up one time, like I know we talked about this before.
And we're specifically talking about, you guys, when you hear like auto inserted ads in podcasts, kind of like a radio ad that's not read by the host. Host read ads are a different price point. But yeah, those auto ads that are just like ads on the radio, the TV. Okay. So tell them, Zach, tell them.
Those auto ads. So I think like Living Corporate at one point, we were doing like maybe like 250,000 impressions a month. And like we was only getting like $2,000 a month in ad revenue. But I want y'all to realize like what I just said. I said 250,000 impressions a month. Do you understand that there's podcasts out there that don't do 250,000 impressions a year? Like independent podders. I'm not talking about if you were part of ABC or whatever, you got a marketing budget. I'm talking about like just a regular guy. That's a lot of impressions, yo. And you're saying that you're going to basically do $24,000 a year. So for me, like, and yes, there were some host rate ads I would do and the rates in those would be different. I still would say though that like I quickly realized that I had to just be more creative with how I was going to generate revenue.
Ding, ding, ding.
Through Living Corporate, right?
Yep.
And so what we decided to do early was I said, okay, I've gotten enough of these LinkedIn messages and DMs and emails saying how much that Living Corporate helps them learn and grow and navigate the world of work. They use it as a learning tool. So after a bunch of different attempts to do it, I finally said, what does it look like to extrapolate all of this insight from all of these podcasts that I own, right? So, and I think just the headline of this is just IP maximization because you own it. It's yours.
I like that. IP maximization.
Yeah. IP maximization. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're sitting on all this audio. What are you going to do about it? And so for us, we built our own AI engine before everything was AI. And don't get me started. It's just, oh my gosh.
So tell the people what you mean by that. Like, you built your own AI engine. What's that mean?
Yeah. So we built our own tool that ingested our entire audio library of podcasts and then transformed that content into e-learning modules. Right. And so, but I needed AI. The reason why I decided to use AI for that was because at first we tried to work with an Ivy League institution. And the feedback from us was, hey, this is all really great content and we're not questioning the value of it. But one, the scale of it, the sheer volume is too unwieldy. And because it was like, let's say it was like 900 hours of content.
Your content that they wanted to be turned into something else, or their content that they wanted?
My content, Living Corporate's library at the time was like 900 hours.
Okay.
And so they were like, okay, so that's much more than we've ever, and like, you know, from that we've ever researched. Because I wanted them to, what I wanted them to do was I wanted them to organize it, themify it, and categorize it. So we could make it into a queryable library that you could then manipulate and turn into learning material. And they said, it's just too big. Two, they said, because these are conversations and not you like asking the same exact question over 900 hours, our research methodology, it would take us years to analyze this.
Years? Oh, wow.
Listen, because higher ed is slow, right? But I wanted something that was rigorous, right? But at the same time, it's going to take too long. So we built our tool so that it could do all this for us. And as opposed to taking like several years, it took us like a couple weeks, right? And so we took all this content, we turned them into e-learning modules. We built an e-learning platform, all custom. And then we said, hey, listen, brands, all y'all trying to learn about why the N-word is bad. As opposed to asking your employees, you got it late. As opposed to asking your employees.
Are they really trying to learn about that?
Can you tell us why it's bad to say that? Goodness. Okay, yeah, come on. Let's sit down and talk about 1619 for the next 3 hours, and let me let you know why it's bad. So no. Yeah. So like as opposed to you tasking your employees who have full-time jobs to do that, and as opposed to paying $50,000 to have Robin DiAngelo come in and lecture you about how evil you are, why don't you just pay? Why are you laughing, Kayla?
I'm like, is this part of your pitch when you tell them? Like,
I do be saying this though, yeah. As I say, you be paying Robin DiAngelo like $65,000 to come in and tell y'all why y'all so evil. Why not just spend like a percentage of that and subscribe to our platform? It's like Spotify, but for employee experience and inclusive leadership. And all your employees can have access to it. And y'all can build out playlists, and you can socialize these playlists out on your network. And this can be like an actual interactive, like SaaS type experience for your organization. It's going to be much more cost effective. And the conversations are not theoretical. They're practical discussions I'm having with other leaders. So you know that like this content is real. And it's not like weird scenarios that just don't, you know how training typically is just really like, it's like, oh, this is not how the world works.
Right. So like, it's like the animated and like, such and such walks in and says this about your hair.
Yeah. It's like, oh, nobody says that.
Nobody says
that.
That's not how it goes down.
Right.
But I love the way that you have thought about your content in such a strategic way and thought about, well, how else can I use this? Because so many of us podcasters, we have these shows, we promote the episode when it goes live, and then it's just sitting there. Like people come across it, yeah, but we don't do enough with our back catalog.
You got to do something with it, because
you got to do something.
I've talked to podcasters and I say, how long do you think your your podcast lasts, right?
Mm.
Like how long do you think it lasts? Like you think, like I think of like, and like this is not shade to us as podcasters, but like there's so much content out there, Nikayla. Podcasting, a podcast episode is like a little piece of candy.
Uh-huh.
It's gone. Because think about this, like Barack Obama did a podcast with my man, he was the boss, Barack Obama did a podcast. Do you and I turn around and go, man, I can't listen to that old Barack Obama podcast? I can't even remember who he did the podcast with.
No, I can't remember. And
that's Barack Obama.
He does so many.
And yet, no one is running around reveling in these old pods. Like that's just not the way media works. And so you got to figure out a way, to your point, to look at your back catalog and say,
right.
I got, because and not even like from this like exploitative, extractive, capitalistic thing. I'm saying like out of respect to your own effort and time you put in. Yo, you put in mad time on that pod.
Yeah.
And you really liked it. And there was some really good stuff in there.
You know, what you just made me think about, like it's almost like thinking about like, what's my podcast syndication strategy, right? Like these shows, they realize, okay, we can't release these in primetime anymore. People are going to be like, you know, there are only so many reruns you could air, but can we find another network who needs some content for 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, right?
Yes.
And syndication was born. So how can you syndicate your podcast episodes? And as you're thinking about your business strategy and how you can use a podcast, just always think about it as something that it can be utilized in different ways forever, not just one time when you release that episode. And that's why I love talking to you, because it just expands the mindset. It just expands how you're thinking about your podcast. And we tend to think about it too linear in a linear manner, like episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, what are we doing with all this content though?
What are you doing? I mean, like, look, I'm gonna say there's one thing I still have yet to do well is, well, several things, but the thing come to mind in this conversation in this very moment is, so Living Corporate has over 1,000 podcasts published, right? And I think about across our networks, probably like more like 12 or 1,300, 1,500, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's enough content, like podcast episodes, where like really every month I should be pitching Forbes, whoever, Huffington Post on like, hey, here are like 15 conversations on why women at work are really important. Here's 10 episodes on why Black employees matter for Black History Month. Like beyond like the learning platform, I'm saying like just really making sure that you're like promoting your content. Like, and Apple, because Living Corporate made it to like, it was on the little Black History Month thingy. You know what I'm saying? Respect. No, I'm saying little like
you gotta pitch the little, you gotta pitch the category each month.
You gotta pitch. And the thing about it is it's like, man, it becomes tedious, and it's like, and Apple asked a bunch of, like, I'm speaking on Apple specifically, but all the similar is like, okay, well, why? And what would it do? And blah, blah, blah. But guess what? Like these platforms, everything is always changing. Because there was a season where I felt like Apple was really plugged in to the community, and you would really see new things. Then you started seeing like the corporatization of podcasts, and you start seeing like pretty much you're not going to be in the top 50 of Apple podcasts unless you got Mad Bread behind you. There's going to be a little logo on the lower right-hand side.
Things have changed for sure.
Things have changed. But now I'm seeing an openness again to promoting, because Living Corporate, again, we're independent, blah, blah, blah. And so, that's the work you have to do. It's about like going out of your way to pitch yourself. And like, there's still more that I could be doing with my back catalog on even just letting people know certain things exist. Like people don't know that we had Nicole Hannah-Jones on the pod, but like, yo, that's relevant right now. That conversation
especially as years go by, and you have to, and sometimes people pitch me again. I'm like, you don't remember you were on the show, but I mean, new things come up. Of course, we want to have a updated conversation, but I think sometimes they even forget, right? Because of the lack of promotion or circulation of things that happened way back when. So I really hope this conversation inspires you to think about content in a different way and how you can use content to build a consulting business, a client service business, because there's money in B2B, y'all. I've primarily been B2C, and Zach, we've had these conversations offline about just transitioning into B2B, what that would look like, what the podcast could do for corporations beyond just, well, not beyond just, because even featuring having different type of conversations is a first inroads into that. But there's the opportunity is ripe, and you are just one of the prime examples of my Podcast Moguls coaching clients who have done this really well. When you decided to leave, like what year was that? And what were your revenue streams that made you feel confident, like I could do this now full time?
Yeah, so I left corporate America to jump to live in corporate full time in 2023.
Okay.
And the revenue streams, I'll define them. So we had our learning platform. So yeah, backing up. One thing that made me feel confident was we had multiple revenue streams, and they were diverse.
Yeah.
Right. And so and diversification for diversification's sake is kind of whatever. It's more about the fact that they were different enough that I felt like each of them could actually, in different seasons, carry me. Right. Yes. I saw the scenarios by which I was like, okay, well, actually, this could actually take off and do this. So, and those revenue streams were the learning platform, where it was like more of a B2B subscription. Our data transformation work, which was really all about data analysis and doing that work. Another conversation for another day. And then the the partnership and brand storytelling. And so between those three, I'll say it this way, that I had enough revenue to essentially cover my living expenses for a few years. And so at that point, I looked up and I said, okay, wait, I got this money in hand. I got these other contracts that are coming. And I also I can foresee scenarios by which these pipelines can really grow. Let me go ahead and make that step and leave. And I did. And
you talked about plotting out different scenarios. Did you foresee shifts in the DEI landscape? And then how does that affect your business?
Absolutely. I saw shifts in the DEI landscape because, in consulting, you end up kind of seeing things. Your job is to see things early, right? So I saw it early, even actually right after George Floyd was murdered. And I'm going to tell you how did I see it that early? So when I was working at PricewaterhouseCoopers, they had this thing called CEO Action for racial equity. And it's like all these people came together and said, racism is bad. And they got together and said, we're going to change the world. And I was like, all right. And so, but what's interesting is that even let's say maybe months after George Floyd's murder, because there was so much focus on anti-Blackness and white supremacy. But in these spaces that I'm talking about with CEO Action and these other committees, the committees were not all Black. They were multiracial. And I remember back then people being other groups being when are we going to stop talking about Black people so much? When are we going to stop talking about anti-Blackness all the time? There's other problems, right? So I was like, hey, this thing is going to pop. And then it's going to fizzle, and then people are going to get mad and push against it. So that was already in 2020. Fast forward to 2023. I remember I was working at a company called Diversity Inc. And we got on, the company got on Fox News. They were being attacked. Oh, look at this DEI company. And that's when all the DEI became a bad word, blah, 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 blah. So I knew and at that point it was kind of seen as kind of fringe little, oh man, y'all are super racist. Why would y'all say that? But now we're seeing that's kind of commonplace. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, this stuff is going to stop soon. And so for us with Living Corporate, at first we said Living Corporate is a podcast that centers and amplifies Black experiences at work. Then we changed to Living Corporate is a podcast that centers and amplifies marginalized experiences at work. Then we changed to, again, as Living Corporate grew as a concept and as a business. Then it was Living Corporate is a digital marketing agency that centers and amplifies marginalized experiences. And then as I really saw how popularized anti-DEI sentiment was, I said, We changed it to, and it is, Living Corporate is an experiences management firm that prioritizes fairness at work. Right.
Ooh.
And so what that means for us is we're really going to be focused on making sure that your employees and your customers have the best experiences possible. How do your employees have the best experience possible? Well, employees have the best experience possible if they are treated with respect, if they are, and if they are supported in their careers. Well, guess what? We have, and if they know that they're being engaged. Well, guess what? We have these media offerings, we have these trainings, and we have this data stuff to help you understand and get insight into the experience of your employees so you can best serve and respond to them. Your customers, they need to make sure you need to make sure they have good experiences because they're your customers. It's the market. So you need to make sure that, so we have, again, data transformation work. So make sure you understand your sales and your go-to-market strategy. And we have brand storytelling so that your customers can see you in a more authentic light, trust you more, and then engage your brand more intentionally. So
that's amazing. Like, just sorry to cut you off. Keep going.
So for us, that is us. Like, we're experience. It's about experience. When I think about, and it's hard for me, and I guess it's part of me drinking my own Kool-Aid, but I just think it's just logical. Like, everything's an experience. Like, this right now is an experience. Southwest Airlines decided they're going to charge you for their bags. That's going to mess up their experience. And their customers are not going to come no more. And I'm going to tell you something. Somebody who's been flying for Southwest, it's not an ad, or I guess an anti-ad. This is just me talking. I've been flying for Southwest since, like, I don't know, 2005.
Really?
And yo, I will never fly on Southwest again. When I saw that they did that, I'm not. I can't. No. Y'all gonna charge me for the bag? No, I can't do it. And on top of that, like, the plan, I already don't really got good seats. Y'all don't have a first class. Y'all don't understand y'all don't understand y'all's customers, right? But if and here's the thing, like, this is not about to turn into like this anti-corporatist rant, but I do think that it's important for any brand that does not prioritize experience will not survive. And like, the brands that I work with, they all know that. They know that. They know that, hey man, if our employees are having a bad experience and our customers having a bad experience, we're not going to have no experiences. We're not going to experience.
There's not going to be no people to have experiences. And I wish, and again, we're not going to tangent too long, y'all, but number one, I love the phrase experience management. I love the pivots that you've made in your brand language. So that's inspirational too, because you can start one place and continue to evolve and grow as you better understand what's the company really looking for. They're really looking to manage their employees' experience. And number two, I love that we are going to see that reckoning for all these companies that are like, all right, we're cutting DEI, like us, government, Target. Okay. They're feeling it already. Why? Because you can't just turn around after you've told people, here's one experience because we care about XYZ, and then just completely about face and expect people to keep shopping. I don't know who's making these decisions. Y'all are going to learn.
You're going to learn. And so for us, like, we have these conversations all the time. And like, what's really dope about the work that we do, and I get so excited about it, is all of our work is data centered and driven. So, when I say it's employee experience, customer experience, you might want to dismiss me as being altruistic or being pie in the sky. It's like, no, let's talk about it. Actually, like, let's do an assessment. I bet if I look and I bet I can connect your negative employee experience with your corporate revenue performance. I bet that if I was to look and see, like, over time, like, and we've done this with different clients where it's like, hey, like, you're trying to operate or serve this market, but like, and like, those are the customers you're trying to get, right? Okay, let's look at the landscape of that department that is responsible for them. Oh, they're having terrible experiences over here. They don't trust the managers. They don't trust the leadership. They have a high turnover relative to everybody else. They are not as diverse as everybody else. And yet this group that you're trying to engage has these type of diversity dimensions, but then this internal group doesn't. Guess what? That's why it's like oil and water right now. Now let's compare a place that is being successful. Oh, I see. So this department Actually does have higher retention. It does have higher employee relation scores. It does have higher
Look at that.
net promoter scores. And guess what? This area is doing better. Like it's just about like for so many of the clients we have, they're open to looking at the information and then having a discussion, right? Because I'm not over here trying to say I'm definitively right. I'm just saying you should want to understand. Right. And so the insight piece.
Here's the information. Here's the information as well.
Here's the information.
I love that you can present it and dissect it. And the other thing too that you're an example of is the confidence that comes with whatever client-facing business that you're going to launch. You have to really know what you're talking about, but then also have the confidence to continue to grow, to get better. And even as you're figuring out your business model, that confidence piece, like you have to present that confidence. You have to present like self-assuredness, and you have that down. And I think that is also helpful in these conversations because, listen, side hustlers, when you're starting out, you don't know everything, and that's okay. That's okay. Don't go in there looking, insecure. Don't go in there stressing out, like being like, I don't know this, imposter syndrome.
But because Nicaila, like so much of that for me though is like I might actually be nervous, right?
Yeah, but of course.
I think the reality is like, like I gotta feed my family.
Yeah.
So me being nervous or scared doesn't matter. And let's just say for those who maybe don't have kids, like please don't tune out here because replace feed your family with you got to honor your purpose. Like, so what am I going to do? Am I going to show up and like push past some fears so I can honor my purpose, or am I going to let this moment pass me by? It's an opportunity. And so for me, like I get excited and invigorated, and like my passion to honor my purpose, which again, so much of that is wrapped up in serving my wife and loving my kids and take care of my household, that whatever, like that doesn't mean the fear or the insecurity or the imposter syndrome, whatever isn't there. It's just that it's made so small by this other feeling I have, right? Yeah. Which is about like, hey, I have people depending on me, and I actually believe in what I'm saying. Right. I want to do this.
You have to have that self-trust. Like, I trust myself to figure this out. I trust myself to get better. That self-trust piece will get you through it. Of course, you'll feel nervous and you know all the quotes, the tried and true, feel the fear, do it anyway, do it even if your voice shakes. All of that is true, will always be true. We're going to jump into the lightning round.
Let's
just
go.
Answer the very first thing that comes to mind. All right. Number one, what is a top resource these days that's really helping you in your business?
Opus Clip.
Ooh, what's that?
Opus.ai is a tool that, so what you can do is you can actually drop your whole pod into it and it'll make a bunch of different clips for you. It'll make like 40 or 50 clips at a time. And so like for me, because I'm trying to do a better job and continue to do a better job of like amplifying Living Corporate across YouTube and different socials. But I don't have necessarily the capacity to go into CapCut and like make all these things myself. I need a tool that can do it at a scalable way. So Opus, this is not an ad, but you asked me a lightning round question, helps me in that. And so I definitely would recommend that tool or similar type tools because it'll naturally pull out the most viral things of your interview. Yep. And then like put captions on it and make it all whatever. And then you just download them all and then you can just upload them wherever you want to upload them.
Ooh, I love that one. Okay. Number two, now who is a Black woman entrepreneur who you admire and would want to trade places with if you could for a day?
Perhaps either Issa Rae or Shonda Rhimes. Probably Shonda Rhimes, only because I would love to understand and see what it's like to have. She's built like a media empire, but she also still has done it through and kind of inside of different brands. And so I'd love to understand what that power dynamic looks like because yes, she's a creator, and I'm not saying she's not an owner, but it's just different. I'd be really curious about like what that dynamic is. Because I remember when she left ABC, when she tried to get these extra tickets for Disney, and they were like, no. She's like, you know what? Bump y'all.
Yeah, that was so foul. They couldn't give her tickets. Oh my God.
Right. So like I'm hyper curious about that. But let's keep going.
Yeah. Let's keep it going. All right. Number 3, what's a non-negotiable part of your day these days?
Oh my gosh, yo, non-negotiable is just family. You know, I'm so washed, yo. I'm a family dude. I don't be going nowhere. Yes. I stay at the crib with my family. That's really a non-negotiable, just time, and spending time with family.
I hear you. Number 4, what is a personal trait that has really contributed to your success?
Resilience and adaptability. There are so many things now that I've had success in. Simply because I chose not to give up. Yes. Like, I'm successful not because something magical happened. I just decided to keep going, and I'm constantly trying to think about ways to adapt to make it work. Yes, and so that's definitely, I would say, one of my traits for sure.
Alrighty, number 5. What would be your advice to fellow side hustlers who want to be their own boss, or, as you said, what did you say? They don't let up, they don't back down.
Oh, you don't back down. You have to back up. You have to go move on. You have to go. You have to back out.
So, what's your advice for them, even though they're worried about losing a steady paycheck?
Yeah. So I would say that security is an illusion. You ain't got no security. In fact, layoffs have become increasingly commonplace as a means. This is more of like a business lever that organizations pull now. It's not something that happens at the last minute. It's something that happens, perhaps on a quarterly basis to serve shareholders. So your security is an illusion, and so you should do what you want to do. Yeah. You're gonna die, and in like 300 years, ain't nobody gonna remember you no way. So do what you want to do. I think the other part to that, though, is being your own boss is also an illusion. You will always have someone that you are accountable to serve. It's just that when you're your quote unquote own boss, you end up having a ton of other bosses, especially if your organization or business is really complex or big. So, so those are the things, and I just go for it, man. You know what I'm saying? Now, look, please don't take me serious. If you got like 25 kids and like, you know what I'm saying, your wife is on your neck, don't go for it. Stay where you at and collect your pension. But for like the average person, but no, that real talk though, those are the things for real. I mean, and I think that it's okay.
We appreciate that. Yeah. And before you go, I realized I didn't ask this because we're having such a good conversation, and I feel like it's self-evident, but what do you think was your biggest takeaway from Podcast Moguls and podcast coaching from me?
Oh, yeah. Biggest takeaway is it's about identifying and standing on the value. I think, like, again, you are easily the best example I have of someone who can look at something and say, look at your work and say, here's the value I'm giving to you. And see, that's so fire. I'm about to preach. That's so fire because see, scared people and people who are not innovators, they wait for people to tell them what their value is to them. There's a difference. So like most people, because they're scary, wait for the market to tell them what their value is. But what you did was you told your audience what the value was, right? So I didn't really know nothing about Podcast Moguls. I was like, I guess I'm gonna look at it. But when I listened and I watched the whole thing, I was like, oh dang, okay, she's telling me what it is. And she's presenting from a position of expertise and confidence. She is dictating the value. That is so dope. And I think that like that is the difference between real leaders and real innovators and disruptors and like people who kind of just make it are doing okay. So that's my biggest thing, my biggest takeaway. I still think about that slide with like here's the thing, here's the market value. Here's the thing, here's the market value.
Because you got to let people know,
that's
because
fire.
Sometimes you just look and you don't really realize what you're giving people. So I'm glad that slide resonated with you.
Oh, I think about it. I think about it often. And sometimes when I get scared, when I put my little price stuff together, I'd be like, nah, it's the value.
Yep. It's value. Yeah. So thank you, Zach. Oh my gosh. I hope y'all learned so much, like I always do, from speaking to Zach. And where can people connect with you and Living Corporate after this episode?
So check us out. We everywhere, Living Corporate. Just put it in whatever your search is. I'm not going to tell y'all a bunch of domains. Living Corporate. Now, look, if you want to connect with me, you just put in Zach at living-corporate.com, or just type in Zach Nunn wherever. Probably find me on LinkedIn. It's whatever. But get at me, okay? I'm outside.
Yes.
Not really. I'm actually inside the house, but I'm more metaphorically outside.
And with that, y'all, there you have it. Thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you next week. Hey guys, thanks for listening to Side Hustle Pro. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other side hustlers just like you to find the show. And if you want to hear more from me, you can follow me on Instagram at Side Hustle Pro. Plus, sign up for my 6-bullet Saturday newsletter at sidehustlepro.co/newsletter. When you sign up, you will receive weekly nuggets from me, including what I'm up to, personal lessons, and my business tip of the week. Again, that's sidehustlepro.co/newsletter to sign up. Talk to you soon.